So you may remember in my last video on the Twin Towers that at the end I mentioned a documentary that was filmed about 8 months prior to the collapse. Today I'm going to have a little look at that. Now, I'm hesitant to call this a reaction because it's not scary, it's not funny, I'm not going to be jumping out of my seat in an animated style. It's just, let's call this a watch along. It's just you and me sat together, and we're just gonna watch this together, and hopefully we might learn something, because it's quite a fascinating documentary on how the towers actually operated day by day, which I guess a lot of people never really thought about. Nathan has hobbies and Nathan has interests, and I am going to insert them onto this channel and force you along with me. Alright, let's go.
The World Trade Center, unmistakable in its silhouette against the sky. Its twin towers of steel, glass, and concrete reach more than 1,360 feet in the air, dominating the skyline as Manhattan's...
Just straight away, I'm sorry for pausing it so early, but I mean, look at that view. You'd be tempted normally to just say, wow, what an unbelievable view that is. Imagine working there, imagine visiting that and seeing that, but all I can think about is that was like the last view that some people had. that was the decision in front of them right there. It was either move forwards or move back. It's what a harrowing choice that must have been.
Structures. The pair has come to symbolize both the contemporary spirit and vitality of New York.
I believe New York's icon at the moment is the World Trade Center.
So recorded January, 8 months before everything happened.
World as symbolizing New York.
It's so upbeat as well, you know. It's so
on a certain level falls in love with the World Trade Center.
optimistic.
No matter what you think about it aesthetically, the fact that human beings have the ingenuity to be able to do this kind of thing is, you know, kind of stunning and affirming in an odd kind of way.
Nothing else like this had ever been built before or since. The architectural beauty of the World Trade Center is subtle and it's easy to underestimate.
Damn.
Each tower is 110 stories high. Each floor, an acre in size. Under each roof, 4 million square feet of space. But the towers...
The symmetry is it actually is just... I think there was a lot of criticism when they were first built that they looked ugly, but I think obviously they must have grown on people because now they've become almost a symbol of what a good building looks like. They're just so aesthetically pleasing.
The towers are merely the focal point of what is an extraordinary complex of 7 buildings. In all, there are more than 12 million square feet of enclosed space.
So the Trade Center is 7 buildings, not just these two.
Imagine a small town concentrated vertically rather than spread out over 1,000 acres.
40,000 people work here. Another 2 million visit each year. And although the complex was built to be a center for international trade, the reality is that few businesses here have much to do with foreign trade. Some 325 companies, from stockbrokers to high-tech firms, share this prestigious address with the U.S. Customs House, a Marriott hotel, and Manhattan's largest indoor shopping mall.
Subway lines intersect here at the World Trade Center, so people can come in underground, never get wet, never get snowed upon, go to their office, go downstairs, do their shopping, grab lunch, come back to their office and go home underground, and you never go outside. So it's a city within a city.
Wow.
And supporting the city within a city is an elaborate infrastructure, dependable and vigilant.
There's a whole building that exists inside of the World Trade Center that nobody gets to see. The massive systems, electrical, air conditioning, and other, that actually allow us to sit here pretending that we're in a natural environment.
So vast is this city. The World Trade Center has its own police force and what it calls the Operations Control Center,
Really?
or OCC.
That seems a little
The department's
excessive.
sole responsibility is to keep this mini metropolis safe, clean and functioning.
I mean, how much trouble did they
The
used to
Operation
get?
Control Center of the World Trade Center could be compared to the war room on board a warship. It's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The OCC can be found in the sub-basement in a series of windowless
God
offices.
damn, how many rings was that guy wearing?
And they respond to crises.
The OCC can be found
Oh, it
in
was
the
a penny he was
sub-basement
holding.
in a series of
Was it?
windowless offices.
A gold watch?
Whatever goes on here at the World
Must have
Trade
paid
Center
well.
is typically coordinated through that room. If a tenant has a flood on their floor from an air conditioner overflowing, that's where they call it. If the fire department needs a security guard to open up doors, they're the ones that are sending the security people with the right keys to open up the door.
The OCC monitors all emergency water and electrical systems, including the World Trade Center's immense refrigeration unit.
Damn.
I was overwhelmed with the size and scope of the machinery. It was larger than the flight deck of an aircraft carrier.
Refrigeration,
Pipes
huh?
on a
Does that mean
scale
air
which reminds
conditioning?
one of Gulliver's Travels, so one feels like a Lilliputian among such huge machinery.
We don't really have aircon in the UK, so I'm
Basements
not really
below
familiar
the
with
Twin
that.
Towers on 2.5 acres of concrete is the heart of the World Trade Center's air conditioning system.
Ah, well, there you go.
It's a system so massive, it can filter and circulate 9 million cubic feet of air per minute.
We're roughly 60 feet below grade. We
Oh.
have
Now then, this guy, I remember this guy, and you probably remember him too if you watched my other video. First thing to notice is missing since 9/11, so obviously he was at work that day, so Frank DiMartini was featured heavily in that documentary. He was the guy that I wouldn't say I was criticizing, because I don't want to sound nasty, but he was the guy that was constantly going up and up and up trying to help more and more people when his partner, his wife, was pleading with him to just get out, you've done enough. I think he was, yeah, it says here, manager of the construction project. He was widely considered one of the biggest heroes of 9/11. He saved quite a lot of lives. But obviously, unfortunately, he died himself.
each heat exchanger has a capacity of 7,000 tons.
The equipment is used to cool both towers, their sister buildings, the shopping concourse, and the subway station.
We bring in river water from the Hudson, and it runs through the heat exchangers and cools the water that we use for air conditioning.
God damn. How hot does it get in
The
New
World
York?
Trade Center had considered conventional rooftop cooling towers, but the units would have been so enormous, there was concern that they would mar the appearance of the building. Because the complex sits by the Hudson River, cold water could be pumped directly from the river and used to cool the massive system. Large intake pipes provide the refrigeration plant with 90,000 gallons of water per minute.
River
Jesus.
water is run through the system and then vented back out to the Hudson River. Of course, the Environmental Protection Agency keeps a close watch because they don't want too fierce of a temperature gradient.
The World Trade Center complex has 71 escalators, 254 elevators that make as many as 450,000 trips a day. The express elevators can travel at speeds of up to 27 feet per second, or 19 miles per hour.
The elevators are
pretty
quite
fast.
powerful. Each elevator has its own motor and its own motor generator set, generating about 480 horsepower.
In case of a power failure, the World Trade Center has 6 emergency generators. This backup system can yield 7,200 kilowatts, enough to satisfy the needs of 4,000 suburban homes. It's just enough to power an elevator bank in each tower, stairway lighting, fire sprinklers, and other emergency
Just enough.
essentials.
In addition to that, we have now
There he is
built
again.
a large
My
diesel
man.
power plant on top of 5 World Trade Center, where we not only can provide emergency power to the facility, but we can provide emergency backup power to all of the tenants' computer
Bro, just go.
needs.
Quit, go home.
Even washing the 600,000 square feet of windows of the Twin Towers requires something out of the ordinary.
This is going to be gone
Something
in 8
dreamed
months.
up by its
All of it.
architect, Minoru Yamasaki, who was afraid of heights and did not want to have workers hanging over the side while washing the building. Automatic window washers were custom designed for each tower. Attached by cable and controlled by an operator, each moves along a rail at the top of the building and down miniature tracks embedded in the exterior columns.
Each one has a set of nylon brushes.
Window washing.
18.5 inches, exactly how much.
Hold on, I'm sorry for pausing again. Rocco Kamaj, window washer, World Trade Center, missing since 9/11. My God. So this guy, this poor guy here, worked on the roof of the World Trade Centers. He was the window washer, and he was obviously working that day. So he was trapped on the roof. Ugh.
Windows from 106 all the way down to the 9th floor.
And a squeegee and a 20-gallon tank which holds a dose of detergent. And these machines go up and down the sides of the buildings, between the columns, cleaning one column of windows at a time.
I clean with this machine half an hour, 100 windows for half an hour. 20 minutes going down washing, slow speed. 10 minutes comes up on fast speed. Then I move to one column to the other.
One column at a time?
For half an hour I am free. The washer does everything.
The machine takes a full day to clean 12 window columns. 5 days to clean an entire side. When one side is finished, turntables on the roof guide the machine in position for the next side.
This is done just like clockwork from March to December. However, during the winter months, the operation is suspended because the water would freeze.
Underground, as congested as any street in Manhattan. A loading dock where hundreds of trucks jostle for space to unload deliveries. 1,377 feet above, on the South Tower, the world's tallest outdoor viewing platform. On clear days, visibility is 45 miles, with dazzling views of New York and New Jersey.
The one thing I have always considered is that there's only really one saving grace, one piece of good luck that ever came out of what happened on 9/11, and that is that the terrorists, in their infinite wisdom, decided to hijack and crash the planes relatively early in the morning. What that meant was that anything inside the towers that was open to the public was not actually open yet. So, for example, the observation deck, the restaurant that is in, I believe it was in North Tower, and the observation deck on the roof, they were all closed. They opened a little later in the morning. So, thank God for that, because if there's one thing that could have made this even worse than it was somehow, it would have been for tourists, families, children to have been trapped in the towers above the impact zone. That would have been, well, it was horrendous anyway what happened, but that would have made it even worse. It's just unthinkable. So thank God that wasn't the case.
Manhattan itself. We see it in ads and on television. We've become so familiar with it that it's now entwined with the New York of our imagination.
Oh, there's that advert again. Ugh.
And remarkably,
It's been falling.
after all this time, it continues to inspire awe.
Damn.
Uniform in color, but constantly changing with the light, the towers of the World Trade Center are among the most distinctive on the globe. To conceive something on this scale would take a diligent corps of visionaries and engineers. Completed in 1974, the Twin Towers remain the tallest buildings in New York City. That's a venerable accomplishment, given the city's long history of erecting skyscrapers to rival those that came before. But neither the World Trade Center nor any other tall building would have been possible without two engineering developments.
First, the elevator. You can't have a tall office building without the elevator. And the first commercial building that was built with an elevator was the Equitable Life Assurance Company's headquarters
I am
on
eating, by the
Broadway.
way. I don't know if you've ever seen
The
these.
next major advance
Very
was
nice.
the development of the steel skeleton frame, which occurs in 1888 when the Tower Building is built, which was probably the world's first building with a steel skeleton frame. Within only a few years after the Tower Building was completed in the late 1880s, you have enormous skyscrapers being built that were rising 20, 30 stories. These would not have been possible either if the economics hadn't changed.
During the first decades of the 20th century, some of New York's most famous skyscrapers were built. In 1903, the Flatiron Fuller Building. In 1909,
That's
the
gone now, I
Metropolitan
think.
Life Tower. And in 1913, the Woolworth Building. The next great growth of skyscrapers occurred in the 1920s.
It culminated in 1930 and 31 with buildings like the Chrysler Building and, of course, the Empire State Building, which was the world's tallest building for the 40 years before the World Trade Center.
What a beast that tower
During
is.
each one of those cycles,
In 1958, Rockefeller spearheaded what was called the $1 billion plan to stimulate business and revitalize Lower Manhattan.
His vision was to spend $1 billion of private and public monies to create a kind of gleaming futuropolis.
Jesus.
Core of this thing is going to be this great public purpose, a World Trade Center that will secure the future of New York City's port forever.
What was
they
$1
said,
billion
here's all
worth
this
back
stuff
then?
we can demolish over on the east side.
It was decided, okay, it's going to be a large project, it's going to be done by the Port Authority, it's going to be concerned with world trade. So far, so good. The original plan was to put it on the east side of Lower Manhattan. Gradually, it hit everyone. Why not put it on the west side, and then you could do two projects at once? It was
When
a
do we get back to the
brilliant,
towers?
breakthrough. And the governor of New Jersey said, at least we can see the damn thing.
The World Trade Center project was moved from the east side to the middle of a neighborhood known as Radio Row.
This was the center of the radio industry, where I remember going down there as a child with my father to buy radio tubes.
This was where the first TVs were sold off the shelves in the United States. I mean, this was the consumer appliance mecca. Ultimately, they didn't have much of an argument when you compared what, in the minds of the various judges who heard the cases, was the public good. Well, I mean, you're just a business. You can go and you can move someplace else. But this is Lower Manhattan, and the financial district has to expand. I mean, look, you guys got to get out of the way.
The merchants were bought out. It was the call that changed his life. Out of a field of more than a dozen prominent architects, Austin Tobin and the Port Authority chose Minoru Yamasaki and his firm out of Michigan to design one of the most important buildings in the world. The year was 1962.
I wonder if he was still
Yamasaki
alive when they came
was a rather
down.
strange choice as an architect because he had never built anything on this scale before.
No. So he died in 1986 at the age of 73. He could have seen it in theory then. He would have been 88 if he'd lived on. He would have been 88 when the towers came down.
Yamasaki and his team went to work studying and designing over 100 different schemes and models. Yamasaki finally settled on a two-tower development between 80 and 90 stories tall. Its plaza was evocative of the Piazza San Marco in Venice. Light poured into interior public areas, and windows were designed shoulder width to give people a sense of security, no matter how high the floor.
Oh, that view
But
again.
the Port Authority wanted to make one
That
important
is a
change.
long way down.
The World Trade Center was conceived back in the 1960s.
I wonder if that architect
when, I think,
ever actually went up the
American,
towers
ambition,
since he was scared of heights.
and a faith in technology was really at its peak.
He must have done.
If you think of the other sort of supersized topics of the day, like jumbo jets, you have some sense of the sort of ambitious love of bigness that the World Trade Center represents.
Yeah.
But to achieve that bigness, it would take engineering innovations and an army of workers manning revolutionary equipment.
A major problem in the construction of the World Trade Center was the fact that it was going to be built in Lower Manhattan in an area which was fundamentally fill. You have to think about the geology of the area. Lower Manhattan represents the confluence of two large rivers and the ocean.
Since the 1600s, the waterfront had been extended by over 700 feet by landfill operations. It had been filled with dirt, rubble, old piers, and wharves. To reach bedrock, engineers would have to dig down 65 feet and at the same time not disturb the foundations of the surrounding buildings. The first obstacle then was how to control and remove the water while laying the foundation of the enormous structures.
They had to come up with extremely unique and wonderful engineering techniques to actually pour
Did they
that
not consider
foundation,
this when they picked the site?
while all this water was pressing in on the foundation structure itself.
The solution came from engineer Ray Monty, who would utilize the slurry trench method. It had been used for subway construction in Europe and in Canada, and now would be used for the first time in the United States.